Oh, yeah. Tonight on the Sometimes Show, 5 Republicans who have nearly no chance of actually being the Republican nominee fought over who most won't be the Republican nominee. I watched it. I don't have a script for it. I think it's actually still going, kind of. But I watched most of it. I think they got to do closing statements still. But I did take notes. We're going to talk about it after the monologue. Also, Moms for Liberty are taking shots at a Florida library because they are pretty sure that there are offensive books there, and they're going to prove it just as soon as they learn to read. Plus, Elon Musk has been creating a new AI chatbot capable of Breaking Bad. This works out because the AI is kind of like America's Walter White, and Elon is kind of like America's cancer. And finally, Justin Trudeau is here, and he won't actually tell me why. He just said he has a really funny joke for the end when I say fade to black. I don't know. We'll see what happens. All that except for the last tonight on the Sometimes Show. Oh, I was supposed to do that way. It's been a long day on the Sometimes Show. Welcome to the Sometimes Show. I'm Jimmy Snow, and I really just hope that's enough. Before we get to the news, let's talk about today's Super Chat question of the day, which is, do you believe Donald Trump's political goals will be empowered or threatened by guilty verdicts in his criminal cases? Do you believe Donald Trump's political goals? Basically, do you think if he's found guilty, that'll help or hurt him become president? Go ahead and send your response or a question for me in a Super Chat of $5 or more. Try to remember to start it with SQD, like Super Chat question of the day, to make it easier for me to find. That just, it helps. It's appreciated. I'll do my best, but my best is often not good enough. I don't like that wire thing happening. God, Jimmy, you're really breaking everybody's immersion by being so unprofessional live, but I didn't think about, I just put the monitors in right before the show started. There we go. And I didn't think about how my hood was going to fuck it up. Oh, what a pro. Yeah, anyway, I'd appreciate that. SQD. Anyway, let's move on to the show, and we'll begin the way that we begin most of these normal episodes of the Sometimes Show, with a bit of a deeper look into some of the most popular stories in the world right now. So this is our/news. Do y'all remember this? Y'all remember our/news? It's pretty fun. Later in the show, I am actually going to be making you feel like complete shit about the 2024 election. But for the moment, let's actually talk about the 2023 election, which actually had several victories for Democrats. So starting with Ohio voted to, that's not the right thing. Ohio voted to legalize recreational marijuana, becoming the 24th state, meaning that as of the next election next year, we might actually have recreational marijuana rights in every state, which hopefully means our current president, who keeps promising to do something about it, would do something about it, but we'll see. We did reach out to Ohio for comment, and they promised to get back to us right after they're done with snacks. Ohio also voted to guarantee abortion access by enshrining it into their state constitution, something that, I'm not kidding, moments ago, I was watching Vivek Ramaswamy very upset about. The lights are too hot in here. Everybody else noticing this? He was literally just really upset about this, and that made me feel pretty good. Anyway, these two votes basically proving that ballot initiatives are the big deal. That's what gets voters to turn out. And I don't know how we keep losing that lesson. In fact, my only worry right now at this point is that maybe we did it too early. Maybe we should have waited to do it until next year. But I will say it might not have been worth the risk either. I could understand the reasoning that they would be more worried that next year more of Trump's crew would be there to get in the way, and that actually maybe you wouldn't be able to pass something like abortion rights. That's much prettier. On the fly, on the go, late night. It's been a tough week. There's some crazy stuff happening in my family and stuff right now. So just, don't worry about it. But there's a reason. It's been a week. There's a reason why this episode came so late. It's not really because I just really wanted to do it after the debate. That's so important to me. Anyway, so I can understand if they were worried that the Trump crew would be voting more and might endanger the odds of passing those two things. So I'm trying to not look a gift horse in the mouth, but I'm not going to pretend that I'm not super worried about next year and there being a loss of that same enthusiasm with these ballot initiatives already passed. But again, last night was good. Other victories include Democratic Governor Andy Beshear winning re-election in Kentucky and a Democrat winning the Supreme Court seat in Pennsylvania. And I just like this picture of Governor Beshear. He's got such I don't know, Diet Sprite dad energy. And one of the most significant victories was in Virginia, where Democrats took full control of the state house, meaning that they can block Republican efforts to restrict abortions as Republicans were trying to do. This also takes the wind out of the sails of the governor, who was relied on to raise the money, tens of millions of dollars, and enthusiasm with Republican voters. He failed to do that. So what this will do to, this is Governor Youngkin, and this is Governor Youngkin with a forced photoshopped frown that I thought looked very funny. What this will do to Governor Youngkin's presidential aspirations remain to be seen, but yeah, last night was a pretty good night if you're a Democrat or even if you're a leftist like me and just want to see things at least kind of moving your direction. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people are taking a whole lot about this that they are projecting into 2024, and you can't really. Not when there is a more straightforward up-down choice in the presidential election, and voter turnout will be much, much higher than, this isn't even a midterm election. This is an odd year election. And if what Trump teased today comes to fruition, we might all be super fucked, because Trump today suggested, this is true, that he might give the vice presidential slot to, I almost want to give the live chat a moment. Live chat, who do you think? And don't answer if you actually already know. If you saw the news, live chat, you've got 10 more seconds. Who do you think that Trump today teased could be the next vice president under him? We'll just go do. I'm sure some of them are coming in. They'll come in late, so I'm not going to actually see if any of you got it right. It's this guy. Tucker Carlson, a man who looks like he only eats cream corn. That said, clearly abortion is a winning issue for Democrats, and they need to take note of that in 2024. Even Rick Santorum today accidentally got caught being honest as a Republican. They're not supposed to do that. When he complained that the issues were too sexy and lamented that, quote, pure democracies are not the way to go, unquote. Keep these Republicans sweaty. Keep them real sweaty. You know that this guy, he looks like he sweats a lot. Cream corn. Moving on. A member of the group Moms for Liberty. This is not this was supposed to be the graphic for abortion is a winning issue. A member for the group's Moms for Liberty, there's the right one, made up of women who have graduated all the way from Karens to what I like to call Fashleys, that's a fascist Ashley, entered a Florida police station to demand that a librarian be arrested. They accused the librarian of not removing a specific book from the library shelves, even though the school had apparently received complaints about the book. Now, if you actually watch the video, which is actually police body cam footage from the officer who received the complaint, the Fashley goes a bit mask off nearly halfway through, where she starts to show what she's holding in her hands are screenshots that she printed off, because apparently the fundraising arm for Moms for Liberty hasn't figured out how to collect enough member dues to be able to get her an iPad Air. Printed off screenshots of who she says is the head librarian at the school in question. And she makes a big deal to point out that this librarian is a part of the group Stop Moms for Liberty. And so to that person, the unknown, I'm just going to say, oh, Captain, my captain. But for this commander in Queef, this person represents one of the worst political movements in the U.S. This is probably the group that you can watch most easily to figure out what Christian nationalists are up to right now. These are groups who will do the opposite of what is proven to help kids and families thrive in the U.S. Like, if you want to reduce abortion, make birth control cheap, or better yet, free and easily available. Christian nationalists? No, they're going to go ahead and get you good and pregnant and not worry about your health. Do you want to reduce teen pregnancy? You can reduce it to a nearly negligible amount by simply giving kids comprehensive sexual education, as we've seen this work across many countries. But that would require a book that would probably say the word penis, so Moms for Liberty is not going to have that. But their campaign against books, which can arm children with the language to identify abuse, and let's be real, that's what this is all about, this is the most nefarious part of it. It actually stops children from being able to advocate for themselves and prevent abuse and identify abuse. But that doesn't jive with the Jesus, the gun-toting, poor-hating white boy Jesus crowd. And while they, like the woman pictured here, will claim this is all about parental rights, which in this case would be the right for my child to not be able to hide things from me because I'm too lazy to log in and just look for myself what they checked out of the library, something that most school districts give you the option to do. In reality, they are advocating for things that will hurt kids. Moms for Liberty is the modern day book burning movement. They might not be using kerosene, but that's what they are. That's what they're doing. And just wait until they find out what their kids can find by themselves on their smartphones, on the internet. The thing that they think the kids haven't figured out, how to hide stuff from them, how to hide their activity. No, Mom, VPN stands for vivacious parental notification. So how would I be able to hide anything? Your kids have figured... Look, when I was in school, kids figured out how to look at porn on the library computers that couldn't go to almost any website. They'll figure it out. But let's move on. Let's move on to international news and the ongoing conflict between Israel and Gaza. It's been over a month since Hamas, which is an Islamic terrorist group operating mostly in Palestine, attacked a music festival in Israel and killed nearly 1,400 people and took 240 hostages, that according to Israel. Here now, a month later, a month of retaliation later, and the Gazan Ministry of Health has claimed that over 10,500 people have been killed in Gaza, including more than 4,000 children. The civilian and child death toll has gone so far beyond reasonable that even finally, the UN and the US are calling for a temporary ceasefire to open a humanitarian corridor and help the injured civilians. Also to get fuel into hospitals. And when I say even the US and the UN, it's because neither entity actually have a record of trying to do much to meaningfully limit Israel in their retaliatory or hostile expansion efforts. And so Israel has essentially said no. And in response, the UN was like, all right, well, they said no. Yes, they said no. They've done minimum efforts, little things here and there. Like today, there was a 5-hour window for civilians to not move out of Gaza, just to move from the north to the south. But obviously 5 hours, that's an insufficient effort. That's not saving enough civilian and, again, child lives. And they're going to continue the strikes until the hostages are returned, according to Israel. And Hamas has said, and I do want to remind everybody, Hamas is not Palestine. Hamas is not Gaza. Hamas has said they aren't returning the hostages until the ground assault and the rocket strikes end. So they both have basically said, we won't stop until you stop first. And the question is, when do the UN and the US actually enforce the request for a ceasefire? We're already up to 3 times as many dead children in Gaza as the number of total casualties Hamas created on October 7th. Just children. More than half of the Gazan population has been displaced, and Hamas has claimed, which, of course, we can't be sure that anything they say is true, but they are saying that 50 of the Israeli prisoners were killed by strikes done by the Israelis. And if that's true, again, we don't know whether it is, but if that is true, then you can't say that this is exactly an effective hostage recovery mission either. But this all, as American citizens and American politicians, seem very far apart as well. Everything you see from Congress is almost universally favoring Israel without nearly enough of innocent Gazan civilians' lives being considered or mentioned at all. You don't really see the diversity of thought and even the nuance from the American populace in Congress. But what we did see this week was Rashida Tlaib censured by Congress for her support of Palestinian civilians. She is a Palestinian American. And her use of a phrase, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Now, that phrase is a popular chant among people who believe there should be a one-state solution, which includes Israelis and Arabs living in peace. But there are also extremists who use it. There are people who have meant it as a violent dog whistle, a sort of remove all the Jews from the area, whatever that would take. But clearly, she's not one of them. And most of the people you hear chanting that at protests are not one of them. Meanwhile, while she has received a censure, people who have said many horrible things over the years have not. And we don't have to go that far back or to a different issue, because last month, Congressman Max Miller, seen here showing how much of Trump's shit he's willing to eat. This much. I need this much of Trump's shit. This guy loves Trump. Used to work for him. Said Gaza would soon be turned into a parking lot. That was his phrase. We'll soon be turning it into a parking lot. And went further to reject Palestinians' rights to live. His censure, I guess, was lost in the mail. There's no perfect solution to the conflict in Palestine. It's tough. It's complicated. But surely everyone can see that we're being hypocritical. We're not doing enough. And we're not actually, as a nation, showing that we have learned lessons from the mistakes we made, all those decades and centuries ago. Or we could just go a couple decades ago and the last decade with the American interference in the Middle East and the unjust wars that we waged there. But we're not going to learn any of those. Those lessons, forget about it. Are we doing the exact same thing? And will we look back with the exact same, oh man, I wish we hadn't done that. We're the good guys, America. Why would we? How could we? But asking Israel to care about all civilians has to stop being... There's a thing now where when you just say, hey, Israel, civilians' lives matter, now we're calling that anti-Semitism. That has to stop. And I assure you that we're going to end up talking about this a lot more in upcoming episodes. So for the moment, for now, let's move on. And we'll talk about other things that are horrible and make me wonder if the world's going to be over soon. And we'll go with this. At least this specific story about Donald Trump doesn't endanger all human life. Not this one. On Monday, Donald Trump took the stand in a New York civil fraud case, establishing the level of liability Trump has for committing fraud when estimating the value and sizes of his assets, which he did to get more favorable loans and insurance rates. So as a reminder, he's already found liable. If this wasn't a civil case, you would just call him guilty. He is the equivalent of guilty. He is guilty, but they call it liable in a civil case. The Attorney General in this case is seeking $250 million in fines and to permanently suspend Trump's licenses. And so now the defense is supposed to be reducing the amount of liability and at least trying to reduce the amount of repercussions to their client and his business to the absolute minimum. But Donald Trump did not seem to get that memo. Because taking the stand, he was basically entirely hostile. That's the wrong one. He was basically entirely hostile. Instead of answering questions, he would instead berate the attorney general and the judge. He was doing everything that you're literally coached not to do in a civil case, and certainly not to do when you've already been found guilty. But even his lawyers were too chicken shit to tell him to cool down. He was acting like a person who was just found guilty of some crime and is now out there for sentencing, and the death penalty is still on the table since it is the business equivalent of the death penalty that they are considering. If that is what they do, Donald Trump cannot do business. All of his businesses in New York are dead. So, and he's sitting there trying to tell the judge how he hates his mom and stuff. He didn't literally say that. I'm saying in the metaphor, you've done something criminal. You're there for sentencing and you're like, well, judge, I got to tell you, your mom, I'm not impressed. Very not impressed. She's not a hottie. Doesn't have a good body. Because Donald Trump, there's no woman Donald Trump won't judge the body of. Y'all remember when he did that on stage, right? About Hillary Clinton at a debate and then became president, talking about basically up on stage and like, and she was walking in front of me and I was not impressed, not my type. He was president. Like, he's running, yes, again, and we're talking about that. But sometimes you just need to sit back and remember America already chose this guy once. That's how stupid we are. And how stupid America is going to be making its way back around later in the episode. But by the time they had taken recess for lunch, the lawyers were all kissing his ass. And I'm not kidding. The lawyers were telling the public that he's doing an amazing job and doing all of this sycophant, weird, cringy, gross, simpy shit of like, he's the most genius witness I've ever put on the stand. One of his lawyers even took to a media podium to give what was essentially a campaign speech. The strategy seems to be that they want to attempt to raise temperatures in the courtroom in the hopes that some event will happen from either the opposition or the judge, that would cause something to happen that they could then appeal on. But more than that, he's clearly trying to perform in a way that they can fundraise on. And that's not a guess. They've literally been sending campaign emails nonstop. I know, I get them. To paint one of the most privileged assholes to ever walk the earth as some sort of victim. This guy who loves gold so much he started painting his face that way. Unfortunately, this isn't the only Trump news we need to talk about, but we're going to save that for later. There's more to come, as I've mentioned. I want to cover a lot about some new polls that have just come out and Trump's chances at winning. And I got to tell you, it's going to suck. You're not going to have a good time. But if so far you're having a good time right now, why not hit that thumbs up button or even drop a subscribe? I'm just saying you could do it. It would be fun. And I think we all want to have fun. Jimmy just wants to have fun. Stick around, though. We are also going to talk about the debate from earlier tonight because it was bananas at first and then it got really boring. But first, let's talk more about what's happening and try to have a little bit of fun while we do it. So we'll move from this, do a couple of quick things, make a couple of quick jokes. We're going to roast the news. One of these days, this date's going to be wrong and I'm going to feel like an idiot. But somehow I don't feel like an idiot all the times they're wrong on like titles of episodes. Luckily, this one doesn't have a title. Tyson, the chicken place, has recalled over 30,000 pounds of chicken nuggets over concerns of metal pieces found in some of the nuggies. And I think I speak for all neurodivergent people when I say, please, in these trying times, keep string cheese and buttered noodles safe, because if you don't, we're not going to have anything to eat when we're stressed. By the way, if you didn't know the stereotype that autistic people love chicky nuggies, string cheese, and buttered noodles, you do now. WeWork, a company that created private and collaborative workspaces for small businesses, has filed for bankruptcy. It turns out WeWork doesn't. I know why it failed, by the way, and the only reason I included this is this. I looked into their services a couple of times, and I think the reason why they are filing for bankruptcy is pretty simple. The service cost too much, and I'm not joking at all. I had my own studio space in Denver, and that studio space cost less than a WeWork closet-sized office with a dedicated Ethernet jack. I had something like 1,500 square feet, and these people wanted more money for an Ethernet jack in a 100 square foot room. And because of that, I asked multiple times how their business model even possibly worked. How was it profitable? How were people willing to pay that? And it turns out they weren't. So that's over. Anyway, to promote his new AI chatbot, we talked about this in the intro, Elon Musk shared the steps for making cocaine as provided by his chatbot. That is the real tweet behind him, and it tells you how to make cocaine. This is real. He did that. And Elon is touting the superiority of his AI company called, you guessed it, XAI, because of course it is, saying that it has access to the information on all of X and all of X's platform, and therefore is superior and, as he put it, based and sarcastic. Because, you're supposed to call things you make and do based, or in this case, attributed to you. But let's be real. He didn't write any code. This guy doesn't write code. Not anymore. He's actually claiming that access to Twitter's real-time information is what makes it the most superior platform. And I just have to wonder why we're doing this again. Haven't they already in the past made robots that run off of Twitter? Sorry, X. They've made them before. And the immediate problem presents itself. So I have to know, how many safeguards is Musk having to put into place to make sure that this robot doesn't become a Holocaust-denying Klansman like all of the ones in the past? Or is he just going to let that fly because the memes will be dope? Anyway, congrats, other Americans. You live in a country where there are still people in jail and prison for having a little bit of pot. But how was she supposed to know that rentahitman.com forwards requests to the FBI? How was she supposed to know to not use her real personal info on rentahitman.com? How was she supposed to know that assassins don't meet at Waffle House to get a down payment even when hired at rentahitman.com? And I ask you, how is she supposed to know that $1,000 paid in installments, but with a $100 deposit, would be too cheap for a hitman? None of what I just said, none of those how was she supposed to know were jokes. All of those were real things. She hired a real hitman, agreed to meet him at Waffle House to give him a $100 deposit and then pay off the remaining $900 of installments of $250 every 2 weeks, which also will ignore the fact that 900 and 250 do not divide into an even number, whatever. And she met at the, and she met it was an FBI guy. All of that was true. I didn't have to make any jokes. There are no jokes here. We'll add some jokes. Here's what I did to make this up to you. I asked ChatGPT to do 2 things. I asked it to make me a picture of a koala riding a bicycle. This photo, look at this, enjoy this. And then I asked ChatGPT, I told it, hey, I'm feeling bad because I didn't write any jokes on this last story. So please write me 5 jokes about a bicycle, a koala on a bicycle. And I'd like to start by apologizing because here are the 5 jokes. Number 1, why did the koala get a job as a bicycle mechanic? He had the right qualifications for wheel work. We have to do the shitty part next. You all recognize that, right? This is what's between us and that. What do you call a koala who can ride a bicycle with no hands? A qualified circus performer. That's not a good joke. That's just using koala again in the wrong. Why was the koala seen riding a bike uphill? He wanted to reach new heights of euphoria. I think they just took the word eucalyptus, cut it in half, and added the word euphoria. How does a koala stay safe on his bike? He always wears his bear mitt. See, that's the same thing. They took the word helmet, cut it in half, and just changed part of it to bear. But that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even sound like helmet. And why don't koalas win bicycle races? Because every time they get to a tree, it's time for a break. But break is spelled B-R-A-K-E. That's the one that is closest to being a real joke. So the good news is AI is not going to replace comedians or me. I wouldn't call myself one of those anytime soon. And by that, I mean for at least another 3 weeks, because this shit develops way faster than its own engineers understand. It might be the best comedian by the end of the year, but not today. Not today. Okay, that was a reset for your mind before we return to a topic that, as I promised, it's going to suck. Here we go. Strap in. I got some things to say. This week, the New York Times, which is not exactly a right-wing publication, released new polling that shows that Donald Trump is healthily ahead in 5 of the 6 key swing states that Biden needs to carry to win. Trump somehow, and I want to be clear, by somehow, what I mean is this country is mostly full of stupid people, and being an asshole is currently political currency. So anyway, somehow is now leading outside of the margin of error in Nevada, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. If the election happened today, he would likely win those states. Biden is ahead in Wisconsin, but only ever so slightly actually within the margin of error. So before I get into the meat of this rant, I just want to make it very clear, there is almost no future where Joe Biden does not win the popular vote. So when I am telling you that we are being stupid to ignore polling, I am not talking about surface level polling or the types of things that people have relied on in the past that led them to bad conclusions. I'm certainly not talking about the, hey, I want my guy to win, so here are the polls I like. So I would really like it if people would stop flirting with stupid rebuttals that both sides, both of them use when polling isn't going their way. And you're seeing it a whole lot right now from messengers out there for Biden and for people who just don't think on social apps like Threads, and I assume X, but I don't go to that nonsense place anymore, saying things like, well, sure, that's what the polling says, but look where that got us in 2016. You can't trust that polling. There's something on my tongue and I didn't want it there anymore. I think it came from it was stuck into my teeth. The problem is the polling in 2016 wasn't actually universally wrong, and it wasn't as wrong as a lot of people want you to think it was. However, there was Democratic hubris that caused them to feature certain polls over others and not appreciate the weight of the ones that turned out to matter. Not to mention, certain poll sources had not adjusted to certain modern cultural things, which should have also influenced the size of the margin of error. And so if you actually look back, the polling wasn't as far off in the actual places that caused an electoral college victory. And there were tons of signs that we could have paid attention to, and some people did manage to pay attention to, in the form of different demographic and cultural polling that actually did indicate things were not going to happen as straightforward and as easily as Democrats were claiming it would happen, as they were just preparing. Well, Hillary's going to be president here in just a few days. Let's just start picking out the drapes. Overall, the national polling that said Hillary would win wasn't technically wrong. She beat Trump in the popular vote by 3 million or so, but that's not how you become president in this country. It was the smaller districts that made the difference in swing states that Democrats took for granted that lost them the election. But before I get more into detail, I will have to say one more time, because of the way so far, every time I've tried to engage people on this conversation, all they do is try to straw man me to death in response. I am definitely not saying that polling is perfect. Clearly, there is lots of polling that is imperfect and some that is terrible. However, there are certain types of polling that you should take with a different weight than other. So for example, in isolation, a poll which just indicates who's going to get more votes doesn't tell you much. Remember, Donald Trump won his seat by some people's estimates less than 30,000, but somewhere up to 100,000 votes because of the Electoral College. So that's the number of votes you would have had to have changed. Even though Hillary had 3 million more votes, he won, and you could have fundamentally changed it by just changing 30,000 votes in this country. There's actually plenty of information coming out of those places that Democrats took for granted and ultimately lost, and those are the ones that should have raised and could have raised red flags, but those were ignored. But also, I really want to know from anyone who is basically just saying, hey, these new polls, again, I know I've only covered a little bit, we'll get there, just ignore these troubling numbers coming out because they're wrong. And I'm just sure that Donald Trump couldn't win again. And I would just like to ask you, what kind of information would you look at and consider red flags that doesn't require polling? How would you gauge if there is a difference between some sort of indicator and the perception of that indicator? For example, the economy. That is often considered the most important indicator of who's going to win the next election. And right now, housing is extremely expensive. Your odds of buying a house have gone way down than in decades past, and even more so in just the last few years. Your rent right now, if you rent, is probably up. You probably can't afford a home without roommates. Interest rates are high and wages still remain mostly stagnant despite some increases in recent years, as there have been some rebuffs to traditional employment and telling, well, if you don't like working here, just quit. Cool. We all will. That's been kind of dope. But All that said, there is no doubt that the Biden administration has, with all of that in mind, somehow managed to prevent a recession that up to this point, we've been basically promised every year for the last 3 years. And I assume we should credit him with that not happening and his administration. But Americans really are not fond of the inflation and how companies are raising prices, claiming that they had to stay open because of the pandemic, but also reporting record profits. Not to mention how many of them have not restored their prices after things like their supposed supply chain woes were resolved. Essentially, realizing people will pay at the new price made them realize we don't have to lower them. Why the fuck would we? I'm not one of the we. That was just me. I should have done a voice. So please, I'm genuinely asking if you think there is a better way to evaluate if there are troublesome red flags regarding Biden that does not rely on some form of polling, do tell. And if you can share with me anything that at the very least, we shouldn't expect the election to be close, even if you are sure Biden will win, I'd love to see that too. Because if you're somehow comfortable with a close election where one person still has the edge, but his opponent is responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade, is currently indicted on 91 counts, and led an insurrection and tried to overturn an election, if you think that you should be comfortable with that election being close, I cannot relate to you fucking at all. The fact is, the fact that it wouldn't be an obvious blowout when one side is an insurrectionist pig should worry you and should tell you this is not the best we could do, this being Joe Biden. But in the meantime, yes, I am going to look at polling, and I'm going to look at the types of things that were ignored in the past that led to unexpected outcomes. So we talked about the New York Times one. Those ones are troubling. You know what else we found out this week? SSRS polling this week showed other really bad signs for anyone who recognizes the threat to democracy that is Donald Trump. Joe Biden no longer has as large a lead by a significant amount with Black and Latino voters as he used to. Trump is now polling neck and neck with Joe Biden among young voters 18 to 35. They're polling the same 18 to 35-year-olds. You know, young people, of which I'm still one for 35, so I've got like a year and a half left. Those are the people who are supposed to save us. Those are the people that we have to go, okay, we just got to get the young vote out and that'll clinch the victory. Well, it's now half and half. They're splitting it down the middle. Trump is now more popular with Black men than Biden. And where Biden used to have a 75-point lead on Black voters over Trump, he now only has a 50-point lead. And Biden has a huge issue with actually motivating many of the Democratic voter blocs to actually go vote for him. Only 25% of respondents said Joe Biden has just the energy and the fortitude to be president, where Donald Trump got nearly double that. And if you really don't think that most Americans' perception of Joe Biden is that he is slow, old, and confused, you are not paying attention. I actually defend that it's not that weird. I don't think his mental state is that strange. I am a person also capable of stuttering. Yes, I think he's tired and I think he's an older guy and you lose some energy. I don't think he's worse than anybody in recent history except maybe Obama. Both men have overall favorability under 40%, with Trump actually having the lead. I really mean it. This country is fucking stupid. And sure, that's the problem. Donald Trump is an obvious con man, but it's only obvious to people who don't fall for con men. Donald Trump does not care about you, doesn't care about the country, doesn't care about the Constitution. He would sell out any of those things to just be perceived as a winner and a strong man and to have one more person admire him. We cannot risk it with Biden when things look this bad and the election is less than a year away. That's all the time we have. And I'm really tired of people who say, look where things are in 6 months. What if they're still bad in 6 months? That's not enough time. A year probably isn't enough time, but we have to work with what we've got. But the Biden people also want to say, look how different things were a year out for all kinds of other candidates, like Obama in 2008. They basically just listen to CNN or NBC and they hop online and start repeating these points. But listen, the thing you're doing when you even make that point is establishing that you're still willing to take a risk that favorability won't hold, that it will get better. And while I was no fan of John McCain wasn't the clear threat that Trump was. John McCain was a traditional conservative. Trump is practically ready to try and reclaim the word fascist. You know, I'm tired of people acting like this word fascist. Why do they say it's so bad? It's not that bad. You know, I think it'd look good. Maybe you just put on maybe you put a letter F, just part of like an F here, like a lowercase, and then you 90 degrees and you do another F, and then you do another F, and you just wear that on your jacket all the time. It would look beautiful. And look, I also don't hate Biden. Biden and I are not ideologically aligned, but as presidents go, he has been less disappointing than I expected. And you can even argue that he was able to succeed with a more progressive and closer to leftist agenda than even Bernie would have been able to, because Biden had so many allies and friends, where Bernie would have had people from his own party or the Democratic Party just purely obstructionists because it wouldn't go over well with moderates coming out of his mouth. Again, I love Bernie, but Biden arguably did more than Bernie would have been able to pull off. I think that argument can be made and may be true, probably is true. But at this point, despite that success, the country, who I will remind you is mostly populated by very stupid people, doesn't like him. They don't like Joe Biden. They don't particularly like Vice President Kamala Harris. And putting Biden up also means that the Democrats basically have to hope that Trump is the nominee, because also, to be clear, the polling isn't discreet about this. Trump is probably the only candidate that Biden could beat. I want you to really internalize that. If Nikki Haley becomes the nominee, Biden will lose to Nikki Haley. That is not me saying I like Nikki Haley. I'm telling you what will happen. Biden will lose bigly, as Trump would say, to Nikki Haley. Now, is there much chance of that? Seems like there's not. Seems like Donald Trump's going to be the nominee, though if Trump was somehow taken out of the running, and there are multiple things that potentially could do it, the lawsuit in Colorado, 70, almost 80 years of eating KFC twice a day, there are reasons he might not end up being the nominee. And if that happened, the odds of Biden losing go even more up. But right now, it looks like it's going to be Trump versus Biden again. That's what we're talking about. And, you know, you really should not rely on average Americans to vote for good reasons, because Americans do not care that Biden actually did transition us out of the pandemic as good as you could expect. Where the Trump admin, thinking they were going to win re-election allegedly, didn't even have a plan for vaccine distribution. As we found out when the Biden administration took over, and what they have nothing. We have the vaccine. They weren't working on distributing it. They don't care that Biden actually got us out of Afghanistan, even after, once again, the Trump administration didn't have a plan. They put a date on. They said, we're going to do it. No plan. They don't care that there has been 3 years of projections that we will be entering a recession essentially any day now, and yet the Biden administration seems to have fended that off. If these were normal times and we had normal voters, those things might matter. It might still be the economy that matters the most, but that's not this time. These aren't normal times. Americans largely do not like Biden. He comes off as old, he comes off as confused, and like he's always flying by the seat of his pants, and that he's never quite sure which way he's supposed to walk off from the podium. Again, none of that bothers me. I don't actually feel those things. The podium thing's pretty true. And I'm not saying that that's fair. I'm not saying that it's fair that he is facing such re-election challenges when other people who have been far less capable and far less successful would have been re-elected easily when their time came. But Joe Biden also, and you have to admit, has his entire career had this air of, I deserve to be president. And I honestly think his deciding to seek re-election, I already thought this before today, but it's become, my suspicions seem to be coming true. The fact that he's deciding to seek re-election when there are so many indications he should not is him being selfish. And it is his political ego. Just as I said, Donald Trump may be the only person that Joe Biden can beat from the right. That might also be true in reverse. Joe Biden might be the only person Donald Trump could beat. And I'm even speaking of more traditional candidates, people who I would align with less. I'm definitely not saying that if somehow Kennedy got in there, the anti-vax weirdo, he would not be a good general election challenger. But there are much more likely to win Democrats ready to take the nomination who are either ideologically identical or, preferably in my case, more progressive than Biden. So I am sorry that it's unfair. If you're a Biden fan, you're super in on Biden, I'm sorry that it's unfair that he shouldn't be the nominee. But there is too much at risk, and your indignation is not worth taking that risk on. So much is on the ballot, and Trump did so much damage his first 4-year term. The fact that it is this close between Donald and any challenger, when he wrecked the Supreme Court, set abortion bans in motion, completely flubbed the pandemic, and tried to overturn a fair and free election. And then let's not forget, also just lied, not even about anything specifically, just lied and lied and lied and lied. This guy lies when there are no stakes. Just, is there an option to lie right now? Okay, I'll do that. I don't need to, but I will. Because Donald Trump also knows that the country is full of really stupid people. And while you're sitting over here, President Biden, the American people are smart. They're going to understand. He sees them as the stupid people they are, which makes them his opportunity. And that's why he absolutely can win again. And anyone who thinks he can't, you are fucking fooling yourself. You are back to 2015 and 2016. You are being stupid. This is who we're talking about. Imagine what it takes these days to still be unsure between Trump and Biden. Imagine that. We are still trying to win over undecided voters between Trump and Biden. Imagine what it takes while living in a swing state to ultimately decide you might sit out. You might not even vote this time between Trump and Biden. And that's the person you have to inspire to vote. We're talking about people who have either felt totally forgotten and uncared for by the Biden administration, and those are the best people who aren't going to vote. And then there are the people who are ignorant, selfish, lazy, cynical, or just plain fucking stupid. And those people do vote, and they mostly vote for the douche. That has to be taken seriously. And if Biden really understands the risk of a second Trump presidency, he should drop and put up someone who would be a more successful challenger. They've been grooming one of them, using grooming in its traditional career sense, which that fucking word has been so ruined by modern society. But anyway, modern cancellation and all that sort of stuff where it's just like, grooming, there's the career sense of grooming, and then grooming, there's a person trying to groom a minor, and those are my two uses. Everything else, what the fuck is wrong with people? Anyway, the messaging has, they've been grooming Gavin Newsom. And yes, I'm not saying I like Gavin Newsom, that he would be the perfect candidate for me. He would be better. Gavin Newsom is incredible at debate, including with terrible people. He is good. He is smart. He has a somewhat almost encyclopedic knowledge. He has responses ready, the amount he is ready to go. He's a very impressive person, communicator, and He's appealing in the way he talks and presents himself. I don't have a crush on him, just what other people will. He is not my preferred candidate, but they've been grooming him to be the next candidate after Biden. They've been bringing him out to do some messenger stuff. He's been doing things like challenging Ron DeSantis. Supposedly they're supposed to have a debate at some point. I don't know where that's gone. Newsom would wipe the floor with Trump. So even their pick, again, not necessarily the one I would make, but their pick would be better. But instead, they're trying to rely on people are going to come around and see what the last 4 years was really like when it's their messaging that has sucked so far. They have been too confident that when they were doing obviously important things like supporting Ukraine, that ultimately the obviousness of that being right would be internalized by voters. It wasn't. And it didn't help that the entire time, unlike other ex-presidents, Trump never went away. And so every time Biden did something right, you had Trump coming in, successfully convincing a lot of people, not only on his own side, that but mostly stupid people. Again, back to stupid people, that Biden actually did it wrong and that Trump, I would have gotten such a better deal. There would have never been a war under Trump, no war between Ukraine. And even though all of the intelligence shows that they were actually waiting for my re-election because they thought they'd basically be able to take whatever they want. But Trump is so good at communicating to stupid people. Yes, I get it. He's an idiot. But you have to start recognizing the game that he is better at playing than almost anyone who's ever done it before. And even many of the people who don't ultimately like Trump either have clearly internalized Trump machine propaganda. You'll actually hear that often. You'll hear Democrats and even leftists who don't like Biden sometimes list the stupidest shit that originally came out of what I like to call the Trump orifice. And Biden also has the best excuses to drop if he wanted to. He could literally come out and say that his mission was to defeat Donald Trump in 2020, and he did that. So now he just wants to spend his remaining years with his family. That would be consistent. It would make sense. He's 80. No one's going to question it. It's even kind of sweet. That's kind of a nice thought. But do not hold your breath that that's going to happen. Again, I want to be clear. Joe Biden is absolutely a better person and president than Trump ever was. But the dude still has this political ego that has been on display his entire career. And I worry that he knows full well he isn't the best candidate for the job, but he can never admit that out loud and actually support a better candidate because he would think of that as some kind of loss. So, what's the conclusion here? Joe Biden, if you are the nominee, obviously, I'm speaking to a guy who's never going to watch this show, but if you're the nominee, obviously I'm still going to vote for you. But I cannot stress enough what an asshole I think you are for sticking in the race with so much on the line, and the fact that after 3 years, regardless of what you think, Americans will think a year from now, you have not won them over yet. Not in those 3. You're going to do all 4 years of winning them over in the final year. You have not won them over enough to make Trump the obviously weak candidate he should be for the resume that he now has. Yes, Mr. President, who I'm sure will watch. That's unfair because it should be obvious. But the fact is that it doesn't mean, but the fact that it isn't means that your administration failed. You failed at messaging and countering the cancer from the right wing. Abortion is now on the table, and you're neck and neck with the guy who has already ruined so many women's lives while desperately chasing the approval of a party who just wants somebody to help them hate other people. Do what Trump's dad should have done and pull the fuck out before you fuck this country up more. Unfortunately, this rant is more of a rant of catharsis than anything because, I don't anticipate being listened to by somebody who could affect change, let alone Biden. So I just hope to get I'm going to have to hope that the messaging improves, just about 1,000,000%, and that at the state level, big time, they're going to put huge ballot measures on, because that would be the thing that would do it. That would be the thing that would do it, despite how unpopular Biden is. Run on abortion rights. Biden needs to say abortion rights, right to choose, that, et cetera, et cetera. Every time he hits a microphone, those words have to come out of his mouth. And yes, hope beyond hope. If I believed in prayer, I would say do that, but I don't. So just hope beyond hope. That's not really, hoping's not that useful too without action, but that we don't see an inauguration one day of Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson in 2025. We do not need, again, a grand con man for president. And for vice president, we certainly don't need a grand wizard. Okay. That's that. That's the part that I said was going to hurt. That's the part that I said was going to suck. Let's talk about the debate real quick. After which we're going to answer the super chat questions of the day, and then we're going to call it a night. I'm not going to do, it's too late. I'm not going to do calls tonight, but we'll do calls on the next one most likely, which will probably be Friday. But if somehow I pull all my shit together by tomorrow, I'd do it tomorrow, but it'll probably be Friday. Quick reminder of the super chat question of the day. Do you believe Donald Trump's political goals will be empowered or threatened by guilty verdicts in his criminal cases? Remember, basically, I'm asking, do you think a guilty verdict would make him more or less likely to become president? I want to hear from you. That SQD, put that at the beginning of your super chat of $5 or more, and I will read your response. Or if you have a question for me, send it in a super chat of $5 or more. If you have a comment you'd like me to read out, send it in a super chat of $5 or more. If you would like me to be able to have, what was the thing, the McGangbang? Do you all remember that? Where you take a McDouble and you put it, how did it work? Was it a McDouble and in the middle you put a hot and spicy McChicken? Send $5 or more in a super chat. All of those things. I don't have tons to say about the debate tonight, but there was some notable things that you're all probably going to see on replay a ton soon anyway. But I did take some notes. One of the things that I thought was very funny about the debate tonight with the five. So you had Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, Ron DeSantis, and Tim Scott. Those were the five people who debated tonight. As I said at the beginning, five people who are not going to be the nominee, debating over who won't be the nominee the most. Some of them possibly Ramaswamy, basically trying to probably get into the Trump cabinet. Tim Scott a little bit too, but Tim Scott's also like I'm the nice guy who's not going to say anything too mean about anybody. I'm just going to keep voting for things that ruin people's lives, because that's what I do in Congress. They did list at the beginning that Rumble was one of the partners on the debate, was brought to you in part by Rumble. I thought that was funny because Rumble, for those of you who don't know, is basically Nazi YouTube. Like that was a weird choice in my opinion that they went with Rumble for a sponsor. Just trying to see what we got here. Hey, send those super chats in. We got to pay for this show, because if we can't, we all go to hell. No, can't afford super chats, so my opinion is worthless. Usually, the free way, if you want to discuss something, is the call-in portion, but we do still have to pay for stuff. We can't just. Everybody who wants to give it for free, you have to filter it some way. And I live in a capitalist hellhole, so let's do the way that buys me more sugar cereals. Just kidding. Do you know what I have for breakfast every day? This swamp water thing. If you don't follow me on Instagram, go to Instagram, because I made a fake ad for it that, anyway, it's basically just fruit water and then the stuff called athletic greens. And it's so gross. It tastes like garbage, but I feel significantly better the days that I drink it than the days it's too noticeably better. My life is too much better on days I have it than I don't, to not do it anymore. Anyway, it was very interesting because the debate started with, and this is actually where a lot of the first few questions were the ones that had the most oomph. And maybe they do that on purpose because people stop watching over time. But the first question was basically, why you and not Trump? Trump is the one that's winning. Trump has more than all of you combined in support. So why you instead of the guy who doesn't even bother to show up because he has this clenched so bad? Ron DeSantis barely tried to make a case. He basically tried to just make a case of like, I'm not going to talk about why not Trump. I'm just going to talk about why yes me. And I'm going to say, he should be here, blah, 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 blah. But he barely made a case. It's like he doesn't even want to be president. And he did so one thing I noticed, he kept mentioning being a veteran. And I think he's hoping that that's going to start to matter at some point, but it doesn't matter because look, veterans, I have complicated feelings about the military, right? But I come from a military family, and my dad was one of the first people to be like, that whole thing about thank a person for their service, don't. It's like, you don't know. If you know a person did something that you value, they fought in a war and you value them, yeah, thank that guy. Don't just thank the random person who's wearing his camo to get gas, because that's probably why he's doing it. He may do nothing and might have had no other options. And that was like, yeah, my dad was always very uncomfortable with, and my dad kind of sucks. So like the fact that he also didn't like being thanked for his service. Anyway, and then I have family in the military, and then I was going to enter the military, but I couldn't because of medical issues. And I'm very glad for those medical issues now, because Jesus Christ, I do not need to have joined another cult, because the American military definitely runs as a cult, like a cult. It's very cultish. Anyway, being a veteran doesn't mean you are more like that. Shouldn't be anything anyone considers. Sure, you could say, hey, as a veteran, I did this or this, or as a veteran gave me this specific insight, but simply being a veteran does not mean you would be a better or worse president. In fact, arguably, most veterans would be worse presidents, since they break you down and teach you how to submit and not to be a good commander. So most vets, nah. Some vets potentially could be very good, depending on the skill set. But again, I have complicated feelings about the military that I'm sure we'll talk about on other shows, but I am a leftist, and it's pretty consistent to what you probably can guess. Ramaswamy did not answer the question at all, why you instead of Trump. And this kept happening. Every time there was something that if he had answered even close to the question, it would have come off as critical of Trump. He didn't. The most he ever suggested was like, I'm younger. I'm the new generation. Let us fly. But other than that, he is very clearly trying to get into Trump's good graces. And I see him as wanting to be a part of a future Trump cabinet, if not actually just trying to get the vice presidential spot. He is I've said this every time after every debate, Ramaswamy is a fucking crazy person and a sensationalist, a conspiracy theorist, and probably a future Republican president, because that's the kind of shit they love. Again, stupid country we live in. But instead, in his intro, he didn't answer the question. He then asked the media, the moderators, getting all indignant about, the problem in this country is you, the media, blah, blah, blah. Tell me, what was true about the Russian hoax? Was that true? Or was that Hillary Clinton paid for blah, blah, blah? Go, answer, go, and commands them to answer. And they just ignore him. Like, all right, well, moving on to the next guy. Didn't answer at all. He actually didn't even give them time to answer. The heavily right-wing audience who, like, he's just playing the obvious hits Republicans like when you shit on NBC. Except I shit on NBC all the time. Nobody gives a fuck when I do it. But anyway, Republicans like when you shit on NBC, and so they're like, yay, yay. And he just starts talking over the audience. So he didn't even give a chance if they did want to rebut, but they weren't going to, and he knew that. He knew the whole thing was just done. In fact, I would say most of the night he took every question and just ignored it and just made some point he wanted to make, usually attacking either Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis, or both at the same time. Like when he made a crack at that we don't need someone in 3-inch heels, and this time we have 2 of them. So basically trying to emasculate Ron DeSantis for wearing lifts, which, is kind of funny, but including within that, a very sexist remark toward Nikki Haley. She had some sort of comeback later. I didn't fully get it. She was like, what did she say? I don't have heels as something. I have them as ammunition. I don't know what that means. Let's see. What other notes did I take? Oh, yeah. Ramaswamy said this also really crazy fucking thing in that answer. He said, and these debates should not be being moderated by NBC and blah, 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 blah. They should be moderated by Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. 3 people who have never moderated a debate. Like, there's just something deeply, deeply fucking wrong with Ramaswamy. He's what people have used this phrase before. He's what a stupid person thinks a smart person is like. And I also can't stand the cadence of which he delivers things because he's clearly been practicing this rhythmic. And at some point I'll work on an actual impression, but the just drives me up the fucking wall. Tim Scott said that he would restore faith in God if he was elected as president. Tim Scott always is super on the God thing. He's the, I'm proof that what the Democrats say about this country being racist and stuff, it's not true because how could it be racist when they say I'm one of the good ones? Is basically his argument. Horrible. But he said he would restore faith in God. He basically makes these implications of like he would make the country much more religious. And I don't know how even right-wing people haven't figured out that secular government is better for religious people. The only way a theocratic government works out is if you are the specific church that it's enforcing everybody be. And even then, usually still not, because you might want to ignore the rules for a weekend, but now they're the laws. All the candidates spoke super recklessly about Israel destroying Hamas, basically saying, get in there and don't stop until the job's done. They showed clearly a lack of concern for any sort of Gazan citizen, for any sort of Palestinian citizen, for the children. They basically none of them brought up civilian casualties, child casualties, any of that. None of them indicated that they've learned a fucking thing about recklessly going to war in the Middle East, about creating vacuums from which radical groups arise. They fucking didn't talk about it at all. They were just very much, I would tell Israel, we've got your back. You have everything you need, blank checks until you to wipe Hamas off the face of the earth. Remembering the ratio that appears to so far being had of, for every one member of Hamas you get. We don't know the exact number, but it seems to be a minimum of 10 civilians per member of Hamas. And it might turn out to be way worse than that. And I assume we will know the number one day. And I think we're going to all feel sick and like we let a real evil happen in the world. Ramaswamy also said that there was the head of government, a man called Zelensky was a certified Nazi or something to that effect. I think he was talking about the president, unless he found a different Zelensky and is now trying to play word games to do a like, gotcha. I meant Tom Zelensky. You reporters don't care about the truth. But he seemed to be hoping that the people who believe in the conspiracies from Russia, the Russian propaganda that Ukraine is ran by Nazis, he seems to be suggesting that. Or he got the name wrong. Could be that he was trying to say some other person in the head of the government. But since considering all the conspiracies he does go for and the number of times that he sounds like he just finished sucking off Vladimir Putin, I'm going to go with that it was probably that. I will say people kept, I feel like I mostly want to talk about him. This is probably the last thing about him. He kept attacking people and someone told most of them, just ignore him and move on. And I don't know if that's going to be, I think that some of them got the advice of like, be the bigger man and just move on from it. That's what they'll respect you for. They won't respect you for it. They're going to call you all weak for not hitting back as hard and not going after him as hard as you did in the past ones. By the way, if he was saying Volodymyr Zelensky was a Nazi, Volodymyr Zelensky's Jewish. I believe he's ethnically Jewish. I could be wrong, but I'm almost positive on that. I'd give that 90% certainty, but Google it. everyone on the stage wants to ban TikTok, not just get it out of Chinese hands, not just prevent it from selling information spyware. By the way, it's already got all the what more information could they want? But they all want to ban TikTok outright, and there's clearly an issue there. Look, I also think that there are conversations we should be having about what children can do on apps all the way up to 18. And if there was a way to do it, I'd go older than that, because TikTok, Instagram, these things are ruining children. It's causing them to commit suicide, getting them eating disorders. It's fucking everybody up. And for sure, we need to talk about that. I think these 5 are more threatened by the fact that there's also a pretty popular leftist side of TikTok, or like be your own free self. Polyamory is popular on TikTok. These things that are alternative to the nuclear Christian family. I think that that's actually why they want to ban TikTok. But it's hard because it's like, I don't disagree that we probably need to do something significant. I probably wouldn't imagine it would be a full ban. But I know your motivations are bad and would be targeting the wrong things. So I don't agree with you. I don't know. It's this weird area that I'm in. But they all said they would ban TikTok full on. Not just TikTok. We just start with TikTok, not just TikTok. As a YouTube content creator, of course, I'm hearing that going like, okay, well, can you list what the other ones are, please? Which ones if you get into office? And then lots of them all competing over who gives a fuck less about the environment. At one point, Nikki Haley even like suggested that Ron DeSantis was essentially an environmentalist when he's totally not, but because he was opposed to fracking in the Everglades. Or something to that nature. And that was a weird one, because it was like, aren't you aware? Like, haven't you sort of indicated that you know that climate change is real in the past, Nikki Haley? I don't know. She's weird. I don't know if she's going to pull hard or right, or it seems like each debate goes a little bit more. Still probably the least terrible option from the right, but that's like saying, which pile of shit do you want to eat? Whereas Biden's more like, I don't know, moldy bread. You still don't want to eat it, and there's like a smell to it, but you'll survive. You won't get E. coli from it. Probably. You could. You might. You will. No, I don't know. Anyway, that's pretty much all the notes I have. Like I said, there was a little bit that happened after we started, but as far as they go, it was really just a lot in the beginning, and then it fell off and got real boring real quick. It was somehow boring even though Mike Pence was gone. And in past debates, I would have just said, well, it was kind of interesting, but then Mike Pence kept talking and everything just felt like licking drywall. Like unpainted, fresh from the store drywall. But yeah, who knows? Who the fuck knows? Let's move on. All right. We're going to do super chat questions of the day, and then call it a night. And once again, I actually did eat earlier today on the last show. I hadn't eaten yet, but I did have a little something, but I tend not to. My health issues, food just kind of always gets stuff going and sets stuff off. So I often wait to have my main meal until after shows or social things. So I'm really excited for well, probably make some chicky nuggies, because I have some. They're just not Tyson ones. So I think I'm fine. I think I am fine. I'd love also, if anybody wants to send super chats about, I want to know that I'm not the only person who thinks, who both sees how insane Vivek Ramaswamy is. What am I choking on? Both sees how insane Vivek is. I'd love to hear some people's thoughts on Vivek and why he is probably the biggest future threat from the current Republican Party. Like, he's so terrible and so obviously awful. He probably does have my bad. He probably does have a career in the, by the way, this looked cool, right? Y'all remember I used to have a show, a different channel called r/news years ago. I do like 3 or 4 short episodes on news a day. Just bring the info. Was anyone here around for that? I don't know. This graphic was made by ChatGPT. Well, DALL-E, but through ChatGPT. It's not real. I just said, can you give me a picture of a person voting in Ohio? And they were like, yeah. Cool. Now I don't have to worry about shit. Nobody to pay. That woman does not exist. And that's too bad because I can see the face of the love of my life. I'm going to fall in love with ChatGPT. Just kidding. She's very pretty, though. I'm a little sad she doesn't exist. Okay, never mind. I have mean jokes about him, but I'm glad he won. All right. You're still a mod on that old channel. Yeah, probably. That channel still has subs. It's not even called r/news anymore. I don't remember what it's called now. Might be called like Jimmy Snow's Corner Office or something like that. Okay. I'm doing this. View queue. Send. Starting with PhD Tony. You're so cool. Oh, I want the camera to move. Hang on. I shall use my mind tricks. Zip, 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 zip. On the other channel, when I did a preview of what the Sometime Show would be like, people suspected I was somehow controlling the camera and changing like photos and stuff with my penis. That's not the answer. It's my taint. It's a taint controller. $5 Australian from PhD Tony. To be fair, no one expects any tweet Elon Musk is responsible for to be in any way accurate. Yeah, I will say I don't know whether I didn't bother to look. I've never made cocaine in my life. Consume cocaine? Well, I'm not going to admit that till I check the statute of limitations, but I've never made cocaine. Joshua Everett says, SQD, it looks like polls and GOP internals have Trump down in every swing state if and only if he is convicted of any felony before the general. Yeah, and that was something that a lot of people so those are older polls and a lot of people were feeling really good about. Down if and only if. But this first case, this civil case where he's already been found liable has sent his numbers up. And his numbers go up when he does things like make courtroom speeches and tell this is a totally unfair, you're an unfair judge. It's an unfair, I'm getting an unfair shake. My freedom of speech, they're keeping all my freedoms. They're keeping them. They're taking them. They're keeping them. They're saying, frankly, that this is the worst case and legal thing to ever happen to any president ever. Yeah. And then he gets tons of money for ranting, just going pure stream of consciousness ranting. Cold breakfast for you. Unless we get some more super chats, this is going to be a short one because there are not many in the queue. Let me also fix this real quick. I'm just going to make this a little easier for me to look at. Cold breakfast for you. What are your thoughts on Arab Muslim Americans not voting Dem/Biden over the Gaza situation? If the option is Trump, you are insane not to vote for Biden because this is still way better. Donald Trump, unless Netanyahu insults Trump's hair, Donald Trump is going to blank check the absolute eradication of Arabs from Palestine. I think that, yeah, I think he would support a total genocide of Palestinians at this point. I think you would be wrong to still not. I hate chastising people who have a fucking much harder time and a much shittier life than me and saying like, hey, I know that things still aren't working great for you and you couldn't even call this close to good, but yes, you have to vote on the lesser of two evils. That's just how it is. I don't need these in my ears anymore, and I don't want them in my ears anymore. I don't particularly like the feeling of things in my ears. Yes, Dylan, I do think that you are my senior mod. Monkey at a Typewriter says, honestly, I don't think most of his supporters would care either way since they view them as illegitimate. Likely little effect, probably. I don't think most of his supporters would care either way. Really? I'm not as worried about, yeah, so I guess you mean like his more, I don't know. I could see it helping people who probably weren't going to vote to go, I got to go get my president 6. You know, I was going to say I was going to vote, but realistically, I wasn't going to show up. But now I got to get a 6. I got your 6, Mr. President. Something that my old roommate's dad used to say. I got a 6. I think it would. But the question isn't just his supporters, it's Republican voters, because you couldn't call most of them his supporters. Well, I mean, he's got 60% or something like that, and he of people who want him over the other candidates. And then I think he has 85% favorability amongst Republicans. So in a way you also can say it's that. But I don't know. I think that Trump in a jumpsuit or Trump surrendering to go to prison, I don't know. I kind of think it actually would have an effect. I think they would think, wait, he just let it happen. Why didn't he? What? But then again, I don't know that he would just let it happen. Maybe he would try to activate militias. I do not think he is above that, unless he thought it was. The only reason I think he would stop is if he was sure he could get into a rich person prison that's basically like, super fancy summer camp, or like. Yeah, if he thought the altercation would get him killed, because I think he probably doesn't want to die. I don't think he probably really believes in an afterlife. I don't know. It's hard to tell, because I can both justify him being a Christian and not being a Christian, or a believer and not being a believer. And the fact that his father was a believer might be enough of a reason why he's a believer, because he definitely idolizes that guy. I should say. Fred Trump's dead. Only a couple more left. Send them in now if you want to get them read on the show and help support the show continue. I love it here, though. I do enjoy making these. Today's kind of had to get put together a little fast, and some things got rearranged and stuff. But and I think one portion of my rant, and I ended up saying twice, so I tried to mix it up because I realized some copy and paste problems happen. And then I went off book a lot on today's episode. You can probably tell where. Anyway, it'll help him. I don't think I myself could stand seeing him go to prison. His body is already so baggy and orange. It would be seeing too much like seeing him naked. You know, a lot of places use tan jumpsuits. He could just have a beige one. I have very mixed feelings too about whether or not, I don't know. The future is fucking bleak, super fucking bleak. And in a weird way, one of the things we have to hope the most for is that the right becomes disillusioned with Donald Trump, because if they don't, it's heading toward, I'm not saying for sure that I know what it's going to be, but it seems like things are headed toward bleak, terrible, shitty things that are going to hurt a lot of people and probably kill a lot of people. Whether that is a cultural death, a sort of people killing themselves, for example, because we go back to a society that is so hostile to so many people's existence, or whether it's, just the straight murder kind. Steven, hey Jimmy, first time tuning into the Sometimes Show. I've watched you a lot with Matt. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's a lot of people's first time. The line, as I've built that up over the last couple of years with an amazing team. We just passed 100,000 subscribers over there. It performs even better than a 100,000 subscriber channel. Looking at the analytics and stuff, performs more like a channel that usually has much more than that, actually. So we've got some problem with not being able to convince people to hit subscribe. But other than that, that audience is very different than the audience I had over here. And then I would say most of the audience that I used to have over here, I'm not making the kind of content that they would like anymore. So the Sometimes Show is probably going to be mostly that small amount of overlap. Maybe 10 to 20% of my audience might potentially like it if they realize it's back. And, I also took quite a bit of a break, so I don't blame them if they do. Basically, I brought the Sometimes Show back fully understanding that it's going to need to find a mostly new own audience, and being very comfortable with that and being excited to now not feel so restricted by like, oh, I have to do this for this and this for that. And the fact of the matter is I've had some, epiphanies, though some guided by very much smarter people than me and people who had kind of been kind in the past, but had some reservations about certain ways of things. I would guess about 20% of my audience, old audience minimum, that I think they're probably terrible people. And I don't mean like hate watchers, 20% of the people who liked me, I'm saying. And I hope it's only 20, but it could potentially be much more. And not making the content that appeals to that specific group also bleeds to a larger group. Anyway, I'm just ranting on. It's a new show for new people. I did it obviously on this channel because you have an advantage when you have that big of a subscriber base. But realistically, the channel has like 350 something thousand subscribers, but it's more like a channel with like 20 to 30,000 now. And I'm excited to see if I can get a third channel up to what is worthy of over 100,000. Dylan's one of those 20% terrible people. I'm just kidding. I very much appreciate Dylan. Dylan's been around a long time. That was a big rant that you didn't ask for, but it's just something that I think about a lot, I guess. Weighs on my mind. And I'm just happier and more content making this kind of thing than I've ever been, which a lot of people won't understand. Like, why wouldn't you do the things and make the content that would have made you much more money, gotten you way more views, kept your old audience? And a lot of the answer is, I don't want the old audience. I don't like the old content. And I don't want to chase an algorithm anymore. I want to find the audience that resonates with this. And I think that audience is there. Ed Marie King says, my neurodivergent food when I was little was peanut butter and jelly every single day with apple juice. Still one of my favorite meals. I mean, the with apple juice part isn't as important to me, though I do like apple juice. I used to also put apple juice in like rice checks. I think that's a good cereal combo. Orange juice and rice checks, also good. But peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, I have had more peanut butter and jelly sandwiches than days exist in my life. I think that is true. I don't currently have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day, but then when I get back into my peanut butter and jelly sandwich kicks, it's like, you could just do that for all 3 meals, right? That's fine. I love a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Send a super chat with what your favorite jam is or jelly. Or somebody send asking how to make the perfect PBJ, and I'll tell you. Somebody just asked, why is Jimmy Snow not a moralist grifter? Right as I start trying to grift you out of money over a PBJ. Sorry to disappoint. Fluffy. I'm letting the beard out a little bit, but I'm trying to control it as it goes to make sure that it just goes like this, because mine is it wants to get quite the little monsters from Return of the Jedi, Ewoks. It likes to Ewok it out. Ewok it out. Walk it out. Snuff Hoover says, Snuff Hoover, I've done schniff off of the back. There's a funny bit off of, I'm not going to do it because I don't remember it. Letterkenny though. Snuff Hoover says, if the orange dumpster fire is POTUS again, we might as well accept the fact that the days of the great USA are numbered. I don't know. First of all, was the USA great? There's an idea of the USA and its ability to progress that is very great. But I get what you're saying, more of just, have we cut off the potential at that point? I think that whatever comes next would probably still be very good, but it's not necessarily worth what happens in the middle to get there arguably quicker. Civil wars correct countries faster, unless the bad side wins. Yeah, it's tough to say. I get what you're saying. I'm gonna have to think about that one. If we would lose I just don't know what his second term would look like. And he's joked about the ways he would get a third term, but we know he doesn't care about the Constitution. He even said,
And when rules are broken so bad, you can suspend the Constitution. That's okay. That's when things are this bad, you can suspend the Constitution.
He said shit like that. I came in like a wrecking ball. Valen, I'm glad to hear that. I'm an older viewer and was glad to see the shift. Yeah. Yeah. It was, elements of it were toxic. Individual episodes were mostly fine. A overarching culture that, and the quantity of certain things weren't. Monkey the Typewriter says, I think most GOP voters view Biden as more criminal than Trump. They justify voting for the convict because the other guy is so dirty. Source, I work with multiple people with this view. Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong. That is one of the things too. Like, well, why just because Trump might be guilty of these things that I agree with? Like, I want him to overturn the election, because let's not forget, a lot of them also support the crimes he committed. A lot of them also wish he had succeeded at committing those crimes. And so, yeah, you're quite right. Not only do they not find, like, they think that Joe Biden is the head of some giant corrupt criminal super family. Yeah, you're right. I'll just leave it at you're right. That's true. They are lots. It's like, that's not going to stop me. The other guy's a criminal too, and I like the crimes my guy was doing.
Because I do crimes, I do the best crimes, the greatest crimes, and then I'm trying to get back in to see what I can do to pardon myself. Pardon-a-rama. We're going to have a pardon-a-rama.
Emery says, toasted whole wheat with chunky peanut butter and grape jelly, but I'll eat it in many ways. I could live off PBJ and spaghetti if I had to, TBH. I do love spaghetti. Buttered spaghetti and then like a smooth red sauce that's spiced up a little bit. And then you add a little meat to it, can also be nice. Some mozzarella over the top, Parmesan. Oh, all good. All good answers. However, I got to tell you, as far as your sandwich goes, I go with a nice white. I do like a good white bread. I know. I'm fine with a wheat bread. I prefer a honey wheat to regular wheat, but I can do a wheat bread. But a good white, triple decker. I'm sorry, people. You're going to hate this. Jif peanut butter is the best peanut butter. It really is. That stuff that you have to remix or separate. Jif peanut butter is perfect tasting, and I like it creamy, though I enjoy a crunchy every now and then. I just am annoyed that most stores only have the huge container of crunchy. Give me a little one. Jif peanut butter, blackberry jam, never jelly. I am not a jelly guy.
I am not a guy who likes jelly. And I don't think you're ready for this jelly, but I am not a guy who people are saying jelly.
I don't like jellies. I like a jam, like a preserve or a jam or a not a gelatin that is weird to spread.
That is the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And everybody I've ever made one for says, Jimmy, sir, you make the best peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that, frankly, money can buy.
I don't think you're ready for this jelly. I think the flavor of the peanut butter is better on creamy than crunchy. It seems to be different. If I could get the exact flavor and the crunch, I would prefer crunchy. But somehow you can't. Anyway, I've only got one left, so if you want the show to keep going, get another super chat in now.
Otherwise, it's going to be too late, and we are going to lose this show, and you're not going to have a show anymore.
Y'all can tell that I'm really trying to solidify this better Trump impression. I'm working on improving it.
Not doing this one anymore. And, you know, everyone's always saying that blah, 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 because the real Donald Trump, he's actually down here, and you got to grind your voice. And sometimes what I do when I want to make the voice more accurate, I got to make it scratchier. So I'll scratch my throat up by making a sound. I'll go, and I'll just keep doing this. What a weird time it would be if this is when you came in If you joined just now, it would not make much sense what I'm doing just over here going. It would not make much sense, but then you'd notice that the impression is getting better. It's sounding more like Donald all the time. And that is a good thing. They say, sir, that is a good thing.
Y'all liking it? Y'all ready for this? Jimmy doing his best impression of a didgeridoo. You didgeridoo it. Adding these back to the queue and then reading the next. Oh, good. I'm actually glad to see that at least one of these is covering Vivek, because I could talk about that guy all night. Jimmy, what do you think about people saying Trump would abolish a 2-term limit? Is there validity to that? Trump can't just abolish it, but there are other theories about, like,
frankly, there are people saying that the first term doesn't even count because I wasn't allowed to govern and we could get it thrown out because of the Russia, they call it the Russia hoax, and the impeachments, these totally phony impeachments over the perfect call. We could do a do-over, and so the new term would be my first term.
But no, there's no realistic way of him overturning that. That shit's pretty hard law now. Action Poker says, here's a bad answer: peanut butter and cheese with a glass of milk. I agree. That's a pretty bad answer. But if that's what you like, don't you let anyone take it from you. I am pro people eating what they like in as much as it doesn't harm them. And I don't think this will harm you. I don't think. Maybe you got to pop a Lactaid. Maybe you got to pop a Pepto-Bismol. But I think you're going to be okay. That was just a generic New Yorker. That was not Trump. But I can go back anytime. Anytime you want to see it, it will make your head spin. You can't quite abolish the Constitution. I hope. I mean, he'd have to do an armed insurrection, big time, like go to war, be the head of and this is just not a guy who's going to be on the front of a horse with a sword. Obviously, I mean, metaphorically, symbolically. Because for as much of a strong man as he tries to present himself, like all strong men, he's actually a little wuss. A little wussy baby. Calm Crafter says, ever fry a PBJ like a grilled cheese? It's good. Too good, one might say. I've had that with just peanut butter, but no jelly. But I like a peanut butter toast or a peanut butter toast sandwich. Very, very good. People are saying it's the best way to have it. And in that scenario, I would go crunchy every time. Every time I'd go crunchy. They'd say, what would you like? I'd tell them, get me the crunchy. Get me the crunchy guy. Ma'am. What? That was the one. Everfry. Okay. Hang on. Let me find the. Okay. Here we go. Monkey at Typewriter says, just wanted to make sure I didn't come off as argumentative. Really good show. And that jacket works for you. Hope we're both wrong and things go okay. I don't recall you saying something that I was worried about seeming argumentative. Did I respond to like something you said in the live chat? And I was like, oh, no. You just said, what did you say? Oh, you said, I think GOP voters view Biden as more criminal than Trump. No, I didn't think so. I think you're right. If anything, I'm going to be thinking about it. I'm going to be thinking, it's going to give me pause because I think you're right. But more that I want to locate whatever information verifies that. Who's super? I'll go look. You tell me I missed one? But if Donald Trump wins next year, I honestly don't know how I personally will survive his term. Sadly, I'm thinking being old at least gives me some solace. Yeah, look, I don't want to minimize the fact that what you're saying, but sometimes I envy people who don't have to stick around much longer. But again, I like my dad, where I'm just like lucky. Okay, that was that one. So So you're saying I missed one by Maple Sun. Let me find. Here we go. Maple Sun, SQD, Trump wins the narrative both ways. If he's not convicted, then it's a conspiracy. If he is, then it's a conspiracy. I expect a Donald Trump Jr. run. Yes, I also think Trump Jr. is who we have next. I think that we are starting a line that the Republicans are they like those legacy. We already did it with the Bushes. They tried to put another Bush in our mouth. And I think we've got Trump's going in our ass in the future. And I just really hope. This is why I say it won't be just enough to beat. We have to destroy and reject in an election, to be specific, nothing illegal. We're so far from out of the woods, even if we win next year. And if it's Biden and Trump and Biden wins by a little or even a normal amount is not sufficient. He needs to be rejected so much more. And the fact that he isn't will be a strength for a future where it'll be like, oh, America decided that this sort of stuff isn't crazy, that you should not reject. No, Sanguine Sandra, I said, oh, wait. I put it up and then I think I forgot to say it. Okay. Vivek is wild. He's not a Christian, but is a Christian nationalist. I mean, that's just the pick me thing, right? That's the I'm one of the good ones style thing. I wish I had such poor morals that I could become a right-wing grifter like that. You know, sometimes I think about like how much money I would make if tomorrow I realize that there's a God and conservatism. Like I could go work for Ben Shapiro, right? I'd get an offer right away. Like, hey, here's all the things I've done. Here's my call-in show. You know, I could reveal on the call-in show I'm a transphobe now. I could make a shit cut, just a ginormous killing. But I don't believe in the concept of a metaphysical, like a supernatural soul, but more of a soul as being just the essence of self. I want to be able to do it and keep my soul, keep myself. It'd be too much. That is the last one. I think that's where we're going out on. But you have another moment with me because this time what I did. Let me tell you about what I did this time. Let me tell you what Jimmy Snow did this time. This is all. That's all of my patrons in order of lifetime contribution who are currently active. Now that's too slow. Can we speed this up? Can we move this along? Because it's not a short list. Well, if there's a quick way to do it, I don't know what it is, but these people are awesome. I have a Patreon. I think it's maybe Jimmy's, what is it? Patreon.com/dearmratheist.com. Because it's the old ways with the old names. Nope, that's not right. I accidentally typed Partreon. Yeah, nope, it's not Dear Mr. Atheist. I don't know what it is. There's a link in the description. It's my personal Patreon. You can go hit that. Valen Storm says, Tate Reeves, the Mississippi governor, won by less than 4 points. Mississippi is supposed to be deep red. Looks kind of purple to me. Thoughts? Nope. I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier. You cannot read almost at all into off-year elections. It's not even a midterm. It's an odd-year election. Could it be? It could be. And that could be the sign that it is. Could it also completely not be? And if it was happening in a non-odd year, it just looked like normal Mississippi for sure. So you need more just than the basis of those 4 points. You definitely need more than that to make that assessment. But I hope it's what it means. Mississippi going purple is it's not just usually a red state. It's a deep red state. So I would have to look more into different people's stuff, different people's, the actual people there and why it would be that way. It wouldn't surprise me to find out that there is something else afoot in that scenario. Let's go back to center. Oh, we could even, that's not what I wanted to do. We could also go back to, we could zoom in on me. Nope, wrong one. Boop. And then, bro. Oh, but I wanted to still be on this. Doo-ba-doo, boop, boop, boo-ba-doo, bo, bo. Okay. That's the end of the list. I think everybody was on screen for at least a moment. Yeah, all right. That's it. Justin Trudeau's not really here, but I hope you all appreciated that terrible joke at the beginning. I thought of it and I was like, this one's a little edgy, but it made me laugh. So that's usually good enough. All right. Good night, everybody. Fade to black.